Hello, everyone. Ryan Ellis here, CEO and co-founder of SaasRise. Excited to have everyone in this community call today. Going to temporarily just start out with everyone on mute, and then we'll allow folks to unmute yourselves in just a moment. Today, we're going to be having our very first community discussion. This is different than a webinar, and it's different than a mastermind. So usually webinars, there's 2 or 3 panelists presenting a topic. Today, we are all going to share our knowledge on the topic of AI coding tools. These tools have been changing a lot over the last 6 to 12 months. And we want to explore, the very practical question of among our community members today, what are you currently doing? How are you using tools like Cursor, Replit, Lovable, Copilot, Codeium, V0, Claude, ChatGPT, and many others to either help accelerate your own development process and or down the line as these tools get better, potentially even reduce some of your existing human R&D team as some of these tools become good enough to write code themselves. So we want to explore that question today. I want to first just start by seeing who's in the room. In the room, we have just SaasRise members, CEOs, founders, and then we've also said, hey, if you're a head of engineering, head of R&D, CTO, come join us as well. We'll be sending around a recording of this after the call. So just put in the chat window your name and company and your location, just so we can get a sense of who's in the room today. And once you do that, once you put your name, company, and location in the room today, in the chat room, we're going to go in and just see what experience this group has. So with related to AI coding. So we've got 53 of you in the room so far. Welcome, Ron, Corey, Bill, Gadi, Ken, Pete, Milosh, Arjan, Vinay, Oliver, Raj, Simon. It's great to see so many of you here in the SaasRise community. John, Johan, Soham, Jonas, good to see everybody. So the next question I have for you in the chat window is, what's your experience with AI coding? And I'm particularly curious to hear in the chat window first from those who are actively using these AI coding tools. So if you're actively using AI coding tools inside your software company, just put a short description of it in the chat window of what you're using, what AI coding tools are you using right now, and how are you using them? I think that would be really interesting for all of us to take a look at the chat thread and just see who in the room is actively using these AI tools. I can see here that Ron from Review Inc. is using Microsoft Visual Studio AI Type Ahead, OpenAI ChatGPT. Dan's team, Dan Perez's team, is using GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT. Aryan is using version 0 or V0 for mockups and Cursor and Copilot. Nikhil is using Lovable, Cursor, Claude Code. Christian's using Lovable. Gady's using GitHub. There's a lot. So you can see here that, we've got people in the room that are actively using these tools. So I'm excited to facilitate and moderate a discussion among all of us over the next 50 minutes about this topic. Or I asked in advance, who is actively using these tools. I got a message from Ron Lawton from Review Inc. We'd love in a few minutes for you to say a couple things, Ron. I got a message from Gadi Pitaro from Badger Maps, who's using GitHub Copilot and Cursor. Would love to hear from you, Gadi. Christian Frunze is actively using Claude, Replit, and Lovable. We'd love to hear from you. We have Jaya Krishnan, who is actively using Lovable and Claude in development. So if you're using these tools, we want to hear from you. I'm a SaaS CEO, but I'm not a coder. I learned HTML and CSS back in the late 90s, but I'm technical, but I'm not someone who is writing code myself. And I think there's a lot more expertise in this room. So I'm not here to be the expert. I'm just here to ask some questions and then facilitate this discussion from here. So I want to just, I'm going to start calling on some of the folks that have said in the chat window that they're actively using these tools. And because we've got a lot, there looks to be over 20 or 30 people who are already using these tools here. Please just keep your initial commentary short. What I'd like to hear is, how are you using these tools? And the specific question that I want to explore in the second half of the call is the question of whether these tools 18 months from now, 24 months from now, could get to such a point of development that they might cause us to have to rethink how we do R&D hiring, how we do quality assurance, how we actually map out our product development and R&D workflows, and whether down the line these tools could actually replace much of our development team. So I think that's a question a lot of us are thinking through. Ron Lawton from Reviewing, could you come on and just give us a 30-second, 40-second overview of how you're using AI coding tools at Reviewing?
Sure. Two examples I share with you, Ryan. First one, I've been using Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, for over 25 years at this point. The one thing that I've really seen recently is it has an AI type ahead. So as you're typing code along, suddenly additional lines, the next 3 lines of code usually will appear, and it's getting pretty accurate. And it's like, okay, great, accept that and type another few lines, and then gives me suggestions. And that actually helps me be faster, and I like that. The second example I gave was OpenAI ChatGPT. I've been using it a fair amount to convert JSON objects, JSON data, so raw JSON data coming back from APIs, to convert them into C# objects. That works really well and saves a ton of time, particularly when you're dealing with large data structures with counterparts. There you go.
Super helpful, Ron. We'll come back to you later in the call. I'm just going to get a lot of voices in the room right now. Dan Perez, if you're there, you say your team's using GitHub Copilot and you personally use ChatGPT, particularly for SQL. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, Dan Perez.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, now I'm not doing, day-to-day coding with our main code base anymore. So, but from what I've seen of how the team is using it, it's the code completion functions that I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name. Whoever was just talking was referring to. It's been somewhat, I mean, that's why I'm on this call. I'm somewhat disappointed by how they're using it. Like I feel like it has broader potential. It feels like an extension of the old-fashioned code completion, automatic generation of getter setter functions from data objects, things like that, things that were kind of actually automated long before AI. On the SQL front, I've had more personal experience with that because I still do a lot, dig into the data directly, doing reporting analysis, what have you. And I found I'm using ChatGPT specifically with the SQL Expert GPT plugin. And that's been pretty impressive as far as just literally being able, like basically what I'm able to do is feed in an entire schema, kind of the create statement for the entire database, and then start asking questions about SQL optimization based on what I'm trying to pull out. And it's, that's more interactive. It's been useful. It's not something where it gives you the right answer immediately. It'll, suggest some SQL. You have to kind of know what you're looking at. But then I have found like it's been useful, if it'll throw something out there and I say, well, that'll be really slow because you're doing a join between these two very large table with no limiting criteria or whatever the case may be. And then it'll, as it always does, it'll say, you're right, and come up with a revision on it and suggest something else. But it's been pretty good. Like I do feel like I've productively been able to find some SQL optimizations using the tool that way.
So it sounds like a lot of folks are using these AI coding tools for either type ahead functions, getting snippets of code, potentially some QA. But I'm curious, is there anyone in the room that is using these AI coding tools to write code from scratch, to actually develop new parts, new features, new functionality, new prototypes, new MVPs, new UI UX experiences using these tools? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Christian, you want to share what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So our team, because our product is so new, our product was born in this AI world. This means we've used Lovable to create some parts of a UI design. This is good for Lovable is the best for UI, although it's horrible at backend. And for the backend stuff with Claude thinking mode, we like that because it integrates very well with GitHub. And when something gets complex with the ChatGPT Pro subscription with a O1 Pro mode. So that's the most advanced model there is. It's very good. It can output like 1,000, 2,000 lines of code at a time. and it works. It doesn't work well, you have to do debugging, but it works. So with a couple of back and forth, all of these tools combined together can create something really nice. Replit agent is also good, although we haven't been able to use it for something advanced yet.
Okay, thank you. Christian's an 18-year-old freshman in college in San Francisco from Moldova, and is also a outbound email expert. Aryan, you have your hand raised. How are you using these tools to write code from scratch?
Yeah, so to start with, I'm not a coder myself, but I can tell a little bit of what we're doing. We started using Copilot more than a year ago, but this was really like the type ahead function was one thing. The other thing the developers immediately did is just generating the unit tests because they hate to do that. So there was a win for them. We started using Cursor a few months ago. I see the team now really prompting for bigger chunks of code, and they're pretty enthusiastic about it. And just, I would say 1 month ago, we started to use V0 because I want to speed up the process of designing new UIs for new modules. And we just started that. And I have to say, what we did basically, or what one of the developers did in a design program, just designed a new UI as a first step. But before feeding it to V0, he just also tried to prompt it, and the result was pretty close to what he designed himself. So on what we now are looking at is in a little bit longer term, how to bring all those things together and have a more streamlined process. So I think that so my expectation is a little bit depending on the team, and I heard one of the members that he was a little bit disappointed how it is being used. It looks my team is a little bit more forward thinking, and yeah, we will very closely look in how we can speed up this whole process and also maybe even integrate the process of the designing, generating the code, and bring the code in really into your application. And really embed it into your application. So, but that's what we are doing right now, and yeah, I'm really curious to hear what others are doing, what their experience are. But for us, our experience are pretty positive. Yeah.
Look, we got 3 people with their hands raised. I'm just going to go down the line. Chaitanya Kumar, would you share what is your company name first of all, and then how are you using these AI tools?
Hi, CK from StratPilot, and I think fundamentally one thing that it was kind of groundbreaking, very impactful for me was Lovable, that gave me ability to design UX. Of course, it was 2-3 months of journey to evolve to get used to it and ask it to be focused on a page that I'm designing and don't change in various other places, and develop a theme and stick to it. So Lovable for UX, and Lovable is also writing the React frontend, 70% of the code, Tailwind. And then developers, the backend developers, they take this code and using Replit, and also they are using Claude-enabled Copilot to write the backend code. So we're trying to figure out a steady AI dev, native dev stack. This is how far we came to, and it's been useful.
Thanks for sharing that, CK. Lenar, you're with IdleSoft. Share us how you're using AI tools for your clients and your own software.
Hey guys, yeah, I might be a little bit biased since I own a custom software development company, and also I'm a software engineer myself. So basically, I think we have to break down the coding tools into 3 parts, right? And one part is basically Lovable and Bold New, things that generates something from scratch, which is easily accessible for everyone who can define the requirements, who can drop the requirements into the chat, and then it will generate the whole application from scratch for you, right? But for that matter, like obviously, a lot of us should have a clear understanding what they want to build. And from my experience working with different clients, like clients usually have an idea, but they don't have any breakdown of the tasks. on paper or on the feature list or any other format. So I think that's a challenge, obviously. And also there is tools like Cursor or Copilot, and they are acting more like assistants rather than the full solutions, right? So it's important to differentiate these tools like onto different areas, right? I think for barebone MVPs, scrappy prototypes, things like Lovable and Lovable and Bolt New is great because I call them like no code. Basically, you don't have to learn the code, but you have to just drop the requirements and then it will generate the application for you. But on a higher level, when you're already working with the code base, I think Cursor and Copilot, this is when they come to the play to help you out, right? Obviously, from day-to-day operations, AI tools and coding tools help us out with general stuff, such as creating unit test cases, as someone mentioned, generating automated test cases. That definitely helped us a lot with that matter. But from our experience, companies and coding services, software development companies, they are being threatened by these new tools all the time. Same reason when cloud companies came to play and new programming language, new framework come to play, the older players, they start getting like confused, right? But even today, like we have still applications running on Java, which is like very old programming language, right? And Python came later, Ruby came later. It didn't take away business from these companies. I mean, it did a little bit, but there is still like enterprise companies using more like a traditional approach to programming and developing software. And I think that it will remain there. And most of the enterprise level companies, they are data sensitive, especially like insurance, banking, government, all kinds of stuff. So I think they will get to AI tools maybe never or later. So yeah, I guess my point is the vibe coding is a fancy term that we all heard lately. Is usually helpful for people who already know what they want to build and they want to test ideas. And on the mid-level SMBs companies, like they can have better luck with Cursor and Copilots. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Lenar. We'll go next to HD and then we'll go to Nikhil. HD, you had your hand raised. Was that a comment on Lenar's, or do you want to share your experience?
Yeah, I think I'm close to Lenar. I've been coding since I was in high school, so I have a lot of techie background. And what I've seen so far with AI tool, they're more assistants. I think that's really the correct term. Or very basic MVP, maybe like a single page workflow. But if you have complicated workflow, for example, let's say you have different user permissions and depending on their permission and role, you will have different functionality. At this point, they're not there yet. The AI tools are not there yet. Maybe someday they will be. For us, what's been really good, working really well is tests. AI is really good at helping you write test code. Or create like an API interface. It's really good at debugging. So let's say you have a line of code where something's not working, copy and paste that into the AI tool, and it actually figure out the bug for you and make the recommendation. Those have been working really well for us. Let's see what else can work well. Oh, it's really good at translating from one languages to another. Let's say you have a software engineer who's good at JavaScript, but maybe just a beginner Python coder. The AI can actually translate the language really quickly. So those have been working for us. As far as like a full-blown replacement for a software engineer, at this point, I don't see it. It's really helping making the engineer a lot more efficient is how we're using it.
Super helpful, HD. One follow-up question, then we'll go to Nikhil. Milosh was asking, which coding tool, HD, did you use for tests?
Yeah, so before we would use frameworks, and the framework usually have built-in coding tool. And now we would use like ChatGPT or Claude. And for example, we want to build tests for our API. Give us all the test cases. Here's our API. It's actually quite good at doing stuff like those where the task is really well defined. And so that's what we've been using it for. Yeah.
Thanks, HD. Nikhil, let's go to you. How do you use these tools and what is your company?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Avanceber. I'm a CTO there. We are into SaaS, plus we also do software development for other people, other clients. Now, most of the peers, or like my peers said, I'm like 100% agree with them. So I'm not gonna get into those details. I think I'll just talk about some of the experiments that I did. So in high level, I did three experiments. I tried to build a Laravel app, which is scalable. The approach that I used was I basically kept on chatting with ChatGPT and Claude, and I kept on like building small modules, and then I combined those modules manually to build the entire Laravel scalable project. So that's one experiment. The second experiment that I did was I tried to build a React app. Now I had no like I understand the coding, how it works for React, but my goal was like, okay, I never done a React coding before. How do I code something from scratch which works? So I started using Lovable first. For UI UX, it's great. And as someone mentioned, if you keep giving a specific instruction, it works. But as you try to go like go with some complex set of instruction, it just messes up everything. So then I moved to Cursor. And what I did after that was I kept on basically telling Cursor that, okay, and again, I don't know how to code in React. The idea was do it 99% using instructions that I passed to Cursor or Lovable. That's it. So I kept on doing that. I kept on basically telling Cursor that, okay, I need this, I need that. Then I want you to test it. I want you to repeat it. And then, I mean, it did pretty good job. I mean, I was surprised the final output that it came up with. Although it created a lot of useless program codes, it tried to change database structure sometimes, schema sometimes. I mean, it has its own mess to come up. It comes up with, but I would say it like almost 95% it was there. 5% it misses the mark. And third thing that I tried to do was just focus on a micro problems, and that's where actually AI shines a lot. So if you just focus on a small things, like for example, if you would like to build a certain code structure within your app, or even let's say for example, if you want to build a Chrome extension, AI can build in like whatever. If it is used to take a one day, now you can do it in 15 minutes or 20 minutes with AI. So that was my quick learning, and yeah, that's pretty much.
Super helpful, Nikhil. Any other folks that are actively using AI that like to share their experience? Jaya Krishan, if you want to share. Jaya Krishan, you're still on mute.
Yeah, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah, sure can.
Yeah. So we are also into software consulting and services, plus we have our own internal product assets. So what we have observed is that we don't depend on any of these AI tools for entire application development, but parts of the application wherein some of the areas where we use it when we do the PRs, right? We have developed an agent that does the code reviews, and then before the actual check-in to the masters happen, the reviews are done by agent, and we get suggestions on how to, I mean, what is wrong and which line of code is to be improved, that we get. And then we have also used GPT for specific functionality implementation. So if we can describe the problem correctly, then all these AI tools generate a very good response. Claude we have been using very extensively. And then we are also using in hotfix scenarios wherein we have integrated this with our, I mean, we have basically done a workflow integration with our Bitbucket repository. So if there are any trivial issues that comes up from the clients in the ITSM, basically what we do is all these fixes are basically done in starting from branch checkout from master, then the fix is done and the PR is raised, and finally PR review is done by a technical person. So we haven't actually done the review part which goes to the production. So until that point, everything is done by AI. And we are also on the verge of creating a virtual engineer concept within our organization, wherein a non-techie person who is very well aware of the requirements of the client. If we can describe that, then say somebody like a business analyst who has no experience in the coding part, we have kind of trained them to describe the requirements, and our agent is supposed to create the first version of the code, which then gets streamlined into the development team. So we have been using it very extensively since the last, probably from server onwards, and I believe from a business perspective, our delivery timelines have come down considerably, and there are areas where we have been able to surprise the customer with the speed at which we have been delivering. Not everything is dependent on AI, but we have kind of figured out where specific scenarios where we can use it, and where we should not use it. So that is how we have separated the usage actually.
Thank you, Jai Krishnan. Super helpful. Philippe Dallaire, we'll go to you. What is your company and how are you using AI tools?
Yeah, Philip Dallaire from Consoli. We've been using AI tools not a long time ago. It started with Klein and Claude 3. It's Claude Sonnet. And the first impression we had was pretty good for prototyping. So when you come to using Klein for like some developer who have a little bit of background can pretty much get with the prototype extremely fast. The thing is, it was not ready for MVP or not ready for go-to-market product. When it comes to debugging those apps, it gets pretty messy pretty fast. What happened though is since then, Claude Sonnet 3.7 came out, and Klein also went into development quite hard, and they surpassed, on my experience, Cursor and all of those players. And they're not stopping. They're going quite fast. Even Klein have trouble catching on of what they're going and where they're going. And right now, what I see and what we can experience, actually, we're about to release our first MVP starting from scratch. And it took us in total less than a month to get there for a full-fledged product, meaning like subscription client and everything and all the product working with onboarding. And that's just the beginning. And I shift completely actually the team on what expecting for the developer and what kind of developer we're looking for, because that's where I can see AI being like a huge game changer. I didn't saw it before, but now with Klein and Claude where they are, we are at the point where we can expect MVP done by one man or a really, really, really small team, and being a level of like a team that I will need a 10 or 20 person before then.
Philip, what percentage speed increase would you say is happening now versus a year ago in your development, or in, based on
10
these
times faster by far.
10 times faster?
It's like 6 months ago. Oh yeah, by far, 10 times faster and 3 or 4 times less people. And it go further than that. I'm not looking for the same people now. I'm looking for people who are like okay developer, but really, really good at understanding what the app is supposed to do. Because like back in the day, I'm a CTO. So back in the day, my job was to tell the team what they need to do, how they need to do their work, and how it needs to be done. Now I'm telling AI, or I'm telling my senior developer who are good to be like on their own, what the output we're looking for. And we iterate way faster than before. It's at a pace that I never saw. Like it's really just like since 3.7 Claude. As I said before that, I was just doing prototyping, and it was just like, oh, okay, we can do that, but it's not a product that we can use. It's not a product that can go on the market with it.
And Felipe, if I may, sorry, a quick follow-up question there. You said prototyping. Has the same strategy worked for you for a product which is already a mature product, or is this primarily worked for prototyping and early stage sort of products?
Right now, for what I see for Claude and Klein, I would say full-fledged product will work too. The thing is, like, what changed a lot since Claude 3.7 now is the fact that Claude understands the full scope of the project and understand where it needs to go. You still need an engineer. You still need someone to know what's happening because he's going to do mistakes. He's going to do error on time to time, but he understands way more and way further than he used to. So if the project is well structured, he won't have trouble understanding what needs to be done, and he won't have trouble finding where it needs to go. One of the things that I found is he has a lot of better fallback, I will say. So when something go wrong, it's not like everything crash. It's more like precise things that happen, and you're like, oh, we need to fix that thing, or the flow is not good, or the request, the prompt is not good. That's like we didn't saw that before, but now we saw a lot of it. We didn't do the right prompt. We didn't ask the right thing. So it's really about like knowing how to prompt, but the output is really impressive. And it happened only in last month, I will say, it's because it was released 27th of February, if I remember well. So it's really just in the past few weeks that I'm like, oh, okay, something else.
So a few minutes ago, Brooke from FMTC asked the question, where does everyone rank AI software dev tools on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being complete novelty, in other words, useless, and 10 being a legitimate replacement for a full-time developer? We got a lot of numbers back between 2 and 6. But then Joseph Korshed from Sequence, which is a large sort of Twilio competitor in the Middle East, as I understand it, you came back and you said 8 of 10. And so, Joseph, could you share what makes you see these current AI tools being able to soon replace a full-time developer, or be as good as one at least?
Yes, so what we're doing in Sequence currently is that we are migrating our website to be fully editable with these agentic AI agents. So we're currently actually, we developed our own bot or agent that connects to VS Code, and we're rewriting the whole website using Claude Sonnet Thinking as an LLM. So basically what it does, it creates files, pushes it to GitHub, and then it's uploaded to our domain. So this is for Sequence. Another use case we're having is that we are actually building our own company for this specific agent that we have on VS Code. So basically we're going to be a competitor for all the names you guys have mentioned, Copilot, Lovable, and all these companies. So currently we're using it to develop the website as well, and expected launch would be in a couple weeks.
Well, congrats on that, Joseph. Keep us updated in the community. Loke, you had your hand raised a minute ago. I think it was a comment related to Philip.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of software development in my life, but I haven't done any coding for the last 10, 15 years. And even though I'm intimately familiar with coding and software development, so I just got interested in seeing how we could apply AI in our environment. We have a mature product. Somebody asked the question, how does it work in a mature product environment? So we had a product that was developed from the ground up, and it's been around for 10 years. So I wanted to get my team to start adopting AI because I'd heard a lot about, the productivity increase with AI. So what I wear, both like a technology hat and a product management hat. So what I did is, when some of our customers were asking for certain features, I decided on my own to try and see whether we could use AI to actually build out that entire feature. And I was actually amazed at, I was able to give it very specific instructions in terms of what I wanted and how it would interface with certain API. But, and this was with ChatGPT Copilot. I was amazed that it was able to spit out the entire code in 15 minutes, and I could iterate through that and actually send that code to one of my developers. And now the real test is, how much work does he have to do to get it working? But it was even sophisticated enough to say, okay, do you want to add error handling? Do you want to add exception handling? We were fetching a large data set. So it said, do you want to break it up into chunks so that you don't get into timeouts and things like that. So it was very, very sophisticated in terms of what it was asking, whether we wanted to improve the code by adding all of these features. So the entire code was actually written by ChatGPT, and I sent it off to one of my developers to say, okay, use this as a base and see if you can use this to actually make the feature work. So ours is a mature product environment, and it was just an additional feature being added on to our product in there. So the real test will be, we haven't got the verdict of this yet, is whether that code works like out of the box or they have to tweak it to get it to work.
Thanks for sharing that experience, Alok. Ken Reimer asked an interesting question a few minutes ago. He asked, has anyone made changes to their dev teams based on the availability of AI coding tools? In other words, have dev teams been reduced due to higher productivity? Christian at getken.ai said, I hired more developers. Productivity increased so much that developer ROI became very high. So that's an interesting perspective. And then Jaya Krishnan says you've reduced your spend on engineering by 30% at least. And then HD mentioned you see immediate impact in QA because AI can automate QA tasks. And then I'm just highlighting some of the more interesting ones to me here. There was a later down discussion around how AI is really good at reading the code documentation. Pete laughed that the AI will actually read the developer docs, which few people actually read and be able to remember them all. And Christian says it's true, 30% of our AI use case is just reading developer docs and helping our devs with questions. So there's a lot here. I think the question for me is, it sounds like the last 3 weeks since Claude 3.7 Sonnet came out, a lot has changed in a positive way. I think the real question I have is where is this going to be in 24 months? And what impact is this going to have on our organizations when these tools aren't just, play tools or novelties or tools that help existing developers code, but are actually able to properly build entire software products or write the next version of your software product. Any comments on this topic? Any questions? Any thoughts about where this is all going? HD?
Yeah, actually, in 24 months, I actually see less need for beginner developers, like 1 year, 2 years experience, because AI should be able to do that level of task. And I actually see more needs for senior developers, somebody who understands the whole system from beginning to end. That's actually more crucial. So like for us, I don't foresee us hiring any new grads because I think AI can probably pretty soon do a job of a new grad. So I would be looking more for more senior architect level.
That's helpful. Other comments here, other questions that people want to ask the group? Gady?
Yeah, I think the effects of of AI on coding for the most part, like on our team, we've seen anywhere from 20 to 30% improvements in like the time it takes, especially around let's say the sort of common framework kind of like beginning of project kind of code, especially. So I think over time, and it probably will be in a 24-month time frame. I think over time, what we are going to see is just um, uh, more of the coding tasks themselves are just going to become more kind of like menial, and you toss them over to the fence to the AI. But what that means to me, like, does that mean that we're never going to have to hire software engineers anymore? I don't think so. And I've been trying to kind of coach my team on this and frame it in a way that, coding used to be the thing that software engineers were kind of like really valuable for. But now some of these other professional or business oriented skills become more important. Things like understanding your customer, understanding requirements, doing a really good job at design or architecture, which AI still doesn't do a great job at. Doing the other side of it, of then communicating with stakeholders and making sure that what you built is actually meeting the needs of the business. Those kind of things are, I think, always going to be very human. And you still need an engineer mind, like a software developer mind, to really be able to work with the organization and solve those problems using these tools. But yeah, the coding part of it is just going to kind of start drifting away more and more. But as it drifts away, these other things become more important, and we're still going to need to rely on people to be able to fill in those gaps.
I think the other thing that I've seen is AI gives devs powers that they didn't have before. So like an engineer who doesn't have front-end experience, but is really good in the back end, or has front-end experience but doesn't understand SQL, pair that engineer up with an AI, and that engineer like has like a huge like mech suit that they didn't have before. So I think that's something that people fixate on. Can this AI replace my dev team, or can it reduce my dev team? I think it's more about like what superpowers can it give a smart engineer, where suddenly an engineer that didn't know SQL can now pair up with an AI and you don't need to hire a SQL person, or you don't need to outsource and find a SQL person. You can pair up the engineer with AI.
Henry?
Yeah, so yeah, I think that the very consistent responses, not surprising what I'm hearing today, but as looking forward, or skating ahead to the puck, as we say, uh, and understanding how AI models work, I don't anticipate that AI is really going to make a big difference in engineering until it comes a point where I can submit my entire source code to an AI engine safely. The moment you can do that, I mean, it can really help you out a lot. And it's right now, it's just kind of guessing, 3 lines at a time. But we have, like many of you, we have complex data objects with lots of methods and objects all interacting. Unless there's an AI engine that I can send this to, it's not going to really give me a lot of help as an engineer. And the only time you'll praise an engineer is if it could actually hold the body of my source code. And I doubt anyone on this call would be comfortable in submitting their source code to any kind of AI engine, because the AI engines take your source code and teach everybody else about it. So we have to wait for the day where there's some kind of a safe AI engine that is restricted only to your body of code and nobody else's. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but that's what I'm looking forward to. Until then, we're just basically using the open source model, if you want to call it, of code that's out there to augment our development.
I think it's a risk reward trade-off. Like if you're super risk averse and you don't trust ChatGPT to steal your source code, then you might lose out to a lot of companies that are comfortable with that risk and are happy to go faster in exchange. Because the world you're describing is here today in terms of it understanding our code base. But you do have to be comfortable with trusting them that they're not going to train on your code. They'll legally say they're not going to. I don't know if I trust them. Honestly, I don't think I'm happy to make that trade-off in exchange for going faster.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point of discussion. Any other thoughts on security fears, IP fears?
I did have one other thought that I think actually is an idea that everyone can embrace on this, is that if any of us have platforms that we want to create an API for, or have APIs, taking those APIs and publishing on your website, or just making them available to an engine to the point where if a client of yours then says, "Hey, can you help me with the API?" Once you have the API, they're going to say, "Sure." Ask ChatGPT and it'll spit it out for you. So same the way we use API. Why not use API to use the AI engines to train them on your API so that you can open your API to the rest of the world.
Other thoughts, other comments, other questions people want to ask the group?
I had a quick question, sorry. So I think someone earlier mentioned that V0 is that, I guess the vessel probably is good for creating front end from designs. Is it, I guess, are people seeing any other kind of impacts like for design and testing or other parts of the development workflow?
Yeah, I did something where I actually had to build an API spec. And all I did is I said, build me an API spec for this I used 2 or 3 other competitors that had that API, just using their API as a guideline. And it was able to spit out the entire spec in like 5 minutes.
I'm talking about kind of more going from Figma to the front end code base. I don't know if anyone's done anything around that area.
Yeah, so Dean, I'll chime in here. So I know that our team has used V0, where we've actually fed some pictures of products as ideation and then prompted the LLM to really spit out like a functioning MVP model for ourselves, which you can fine tune over a week, and then gives you a pretty reasonable product. If that's what you're asking for, it does obviously spit out the code. What we've not been able to figure out is a fully integrated solution to our existing platform, which happens to be a mature platform. All by itself as an MVP product was okay. The code bases had some extra code which you had to clean up, but still pretty darn good, about 80% or so as to what we were looking for. And it did crunch that cycle where we did not have enough dependency on the designers to give us the design, and then the Figmas of the world, right, that you go through, and then very quick iterations to get to what we were looking for.
Okay, thanks.
Couple things here of note. One is that to the question of whether you can build take a custom AI GPT and build it within your own server for security and data sensitivity purposes. Christian from getken.ai said that he is a developer who has been able to do that. He put the link to that developer. So if you're interested in deploying a AI within your own server due to concerns about data sensitivity, that could be one way to do it. And certainly the context windows are getting bigger, where they can now, or very soon, remember 50,000 to 100,000 lines of code and how all the various objects work together. There's someone wanted to do a quick poll here around, what are the best tools for front end? What are the best tools for back end? The best tools for testing and best general. For some reason, Zoom isn't letting me do polls in Zoom, but just informally here in the chat window, everyone, if you know what you're talking about here and you've used these things, let's just start with front end. What are the best 2 or 3 tools for front end development right now, AI coding tools? If you have thoughts on that, put it in the chat window. We're going to summarize both the transcript and the chat using ChatGPT, and we're going to send it around as a summary of this call for everyone, as well as the recording. So that'd be helpful. So if you have the best front end tools, put that in the chat window. Now let's do the best back end tools. Any good AI tools for back end? So Amara is saying V0 for front end. Which tools are good for back end? And then lastly, let's do testing, the best QA or testing tools. Do you have any thoughts on that? Put it in the chat window and we'll integrate that. Great. Well, I think this has been a really interesting discussion. We have just about 5 minutes left. What are the takeaways here? I think that's the question. For some of you who maybe aren't super technical, what have you learned here today? Feel free to either speak up and come on camera and share, or put it in the chat window. What have you learned? What have you taken away? What surprised you? Are these tools farther along than you thought? Takeaways from Christian: just use Claude 3.7. Giorgio saying use Windsurf for full stack. My takeaways are that if you use the right tools with the right models, you can actually take an existing developer and significantly increase their output and their efficiency and their production, potentially creating entire MVPs in 1 to 2 months. And these tools are even getting good enough now that they can work on existing mature products, certainly with bugs, certainly with need for oversight. But there's almost like a singularity moment coming, and that's why we wanted to have this call today, to just say that these tools don't improve linearly. Like someone mentioned, I think it was February 27th, Claude 3.7 came out, and now suddenly it works well enough to actually use it. And so there's going to be a liminal moment coming, probably in late 2025, maybe in 2026, when these new models come out, where suddenly it works, not just for MVPs and basic UIs, but for complex products, existing code bases, where we can significantly, maybe not 10x right away, but 5x the development and the productivity of our development team. So that's the opportunity I see, and I think it definitely is worth us continuing to look. The models are only going to become better. 12 months from now, all of the current models will probably be 5 times better. That's how fast these things are moving. Any other final comments or questions before we wrap up for today? Anything else? Any other takeaways or questions for the group? Cool. I'll just ask one more time. Don't be shy. Any takeaways, any learnings, anyone got any value out of today? I'd love to hear just a couple of voices.
Ryan, you'll follow up with whether you provide the recording and the synopsis.
Yeah, we're gonna take the recording and send it out in about an hour to all the SaasRise members, as well as everyone who's on the call today. We're also gonna take the transcript as well as the chat transcript, put it into ChatGPT, and have it summarized, give us a nice article, and we'll send that around as well in the Slack group, the WhatsApp group, and email. So we'll follow up here in about an hour and a half.
Hey, I've got a quick question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I didn't get an answer in the chat, but I was curious. I've got this initiative. I want to use an AI agent, these like operators or whatever tools are out there that can crawl my application with some detailed instructions on what we're trying to do and create tests, like using Cypress or any type of automated testing suite, right? So right now we don't have a lot of automated tests. So I'm dying to get the whole test suite built out using AI so it can be part of our CI/CD flow. Curious if anybody's done that or believes that could be a good use case.
Any suggestions for Chris?
Don't be shy. Share the wealth.
AI tools for testing. Any knowledge here?
Chris, my background is in QA. I will reach out to you separately. I don't have any tools from top of my mind. I think I've heard of one tool called Momentic. It's a YC-backed startup. Honestly, I never used it, but I can ask around from our QA engineers what tools they are using. And using Cypress, Playwright, Selenium, all of them heavily.
Yeah, any type of question like this, I just ask ChatGPT and it just gives you the answer and it tells you what are the right tools. And there's several that it suggested, but I was just curious from this group to see if anyone's actually done it and can confirm that it's a good path to pursue.
What are the tools it's suggesting?
Oh, I'd have to open it up.
So I think, Chris, I also replied to your comment. I don't know about how Cypress works, but you can use AI coding to scrape your website, and then basically churn that data and just pass required prompts so that it can does those required tests. But again, I mean, I don't know how exactly your flow is and how the Cypress come into play, but it is quite possible using Claude or Cursor.
I think it would be interesting to put your website into Operator, the OpenAI operator, and put in your test cases and see if it kind of navigates through your application and finds things. I haven't tried it though, but I think that is interesting.
But isn't that operator times out like every few minutes? So I mean, maybe it will work, but in my experience, I've seen that it just errors out after a few minutes.
Yeah, so
Last thing
here's some examples. Test, Rigor, Codeium, AI, Audify.
Two last things I want to share from the chat window. Joseph asked from Sequence, how much are people willing to pay for an agent coder, an AI coder per month? How much is too much? Pete said $100 a month. So it's interesting to see that. And then, HD is saying, Y Combinator has said that AI agents will replace SaaS. I think about it like this, listening to some of the A16 podcasts, Z podcasts about this topic of agentic SaaS. I actually think that you have to look at the user experience being a human, and you also have to look at the developer experience, and now you have to look at the agent experience, the AX of a product, and your ability to connect your software tools to AI agents so that they can get things done and do real world tasks is critical. So it's not just the user experience, it's not just the API anymore, it's now the ability to connect to other AI agents that will allow us to build an ecosystem of an automated, more efficient world. So software is really eating the world, and it's only going to accelerate the next 10 years.
Ryan, can I add to that?
Please, HD.
I think the fact that you can talk to an AI agent now, maybe the graphic interface is not going to be as significant going forward. But now really you can talk to them, ask them some question, look up some database figure without actually having to click a bunch of buttons and type a bunch of terms. So maybe the user interface going forward may not be as significant. And also you can talk in any languages. You can speak in Spanish if you want, right? So I mean the AI will understand your Spanish. So I think that's gonna be one change.
Well, I'm going to take a quick screenshot so we can send it around to the community. If you're able to come on camera and just say hi, I'm going to, if you don't mind waving, giving a thumbs up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll send around the recording and the summary of this in just a few minutes. Thanks for everyone for being part of this really interesting discussion. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being part of SaasRise. Take care.
Thank you.